What's up, guys? Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Welcome back to the vlog, and welcome back to another video in the series of the Colorado ZR2. Today we're going to be doing some stuff to make it even more off-road ready, so let's jump right into it. All right, guys, so here is one of the things we are doing today. Yep, I got the AEV differential cover for the Colorado ZR2 just so it's a little bit more rugged and a little bit less likely to bend or break while doing some off-roading. Now, it also does look really cool, and since the ZR2 sits higher than the normal Z71, you can see the differential cover a little bit more than usual, and this looks a lot better. So before we put it on, we are actually going to take it up to blackout tinting to have it ceramic coated, because any kind of mud or road grime will literally just fall off of this thing, and you might as well, right? When you got friends like the guys up at Blackout Tinting, you ceramic coat everything. Now, before we go, I want to kind of assemble this thing. So this is the way it ships, and inside the box, as you can tell, there's no logo on it. It actually comes separately, so it's kind of a double-sided tape thing. I'll just kind of stick it in place there, and then I'm going to have them ceramic coat this entire thing so it is ready for installation. All right, guys, here at Blackout, Jimmy's the man. He's the one with the ceramic in his hands. We're going to ceramic coat this thing because we're crazy, but this will keep it nice and clean for all the off-roading to come. This thing weighs like, what would you say, 10 pounds?
10 pounds, easy.
So this thing's going to take a beating off-road, much more than the stamped steel one that's on the truck now. But yeah, this is the process. It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to stay gorgeous. That's why I love these guys at Blackout. Check out the shirt.
That's right.
This guy's a supporter. All right, guys, so you have seen the previous video where me and my friend took our Colorado ZR2s off-road, and the trucks did really well. Of course, we didn't put it through any kind of serious tests or anything, but we'll get a little bit more serious as time goes on, which means the truck has to be built up to handle those things. It's probably fine as it is, but I like to kind of overkill things. So me and my friend both are going to be doing the same mods to our trucks today, and it involves the differential. Basically, we're going to replace the differential cover with one from AEV, and we're also going to change the fluid in the rear and front differential just to get things moving. So let's take a look at the new cover from AEV. This thing is ceramic coated with XPEL Fusion Plus. So basically this thing will stay a little cleaner than it's supposed to and hopefully look nice, because the ZR2 sits up high enough you do see this on a regular basis when people are behind you. And since my truck is a 2021, I do not have an extended length vent tube or breather hose on the rear differential or the rear axle, so I actually bought one from a 2018. Now, this is kind of an interesting point with these, because the 2021 truck came with a tube that only sits basically right on top of the differential, and I'll show you this once we're under there for good, but you can kind of see it sitting right there on the top. This one here will actually run all the way through and vent up near the gas tank. So this is important, especially since you guys saw the previous off-roading stuff we were doing. The water can get up in there, and if it gets to the top part of this, of course, water is going to get into your differential fluid. We don't want that. So I found this. This was a lot harder to track down than you might think, because all the part numbers online do not show this. They do not show the older, longer length version. I had to go to the dealership to get the information here. But of course, I will link the part number down in the description below, and I'll put it on the screen here for you too. If you guys have a 2021, or even I think it was actually 2019 is when it started, all the way up to 2021, they shortened up the hose. So if you want to do off-roading, this is something you're going to want to get. But anyway, let's get underneath there and start this install. All right, guys, we are underneath the truck. Here is your rear differential cover. This total thing here is going to be replaced with the new AEV cover. We're going to go ahead and remove the drain plug here to begin with, though, just to see if this is overfilled at all. It will come out here first before we start breaking the bolts off of the differential all the way around. So if you guys can't tell, the differential is obviously still a little bit dirty from our off-roading, and I can see the original breather tube is right here. So like I said, we're going to replace it with a longer one that runs all the way up to the gas tank door, but this is all the longer the tube is. It comes from right here and then it ends right here. There is a little bit of a filter in here that will kind of hopefully help prevent sucking up water, but it's not very high. Some of the water we went through when off-roading, I would imagine was pretty close to being right at this level, so I wanted something a little bit longer, and for the price at the dealership, I got it for around $56. I know some parts out there can be a little bit cheaper, but since this was a GM part, it's going to have all the clips and all the factory connections that will just kind of snap right in, and I'm done with it. So I'll show you that as well, but for now we're going to go ahead and remove the fill plug here and see if there's any fluid that drains out. Nope, it's not overfilled. Actually, it looks like it might be
Underfilled.
slightly underfilled. The fill port plug actually has a magnet on it as well. You can see it's got some of the fine metal shavings in there. For any of you guys out there just doing a differential fluid change, this is all the gunk that came off of the stock drain plug. So definitely interesting. Like I said, these are all real fine metal shavings, it looks like. Definitely something you're going to want to do from time to time. My truck only has 1,700 miles on it. All of these bolts are 13 millimeters. Of course, this one up here you're going to need a deep 13 millimeter socket for, and this one over here. And then for the stock differential breather tube, you'll just want to kind of grab this part. It just pulls right off the threads of the 13 millimeter nut. We'll be replacing that anyway, but if you're not going to replace it, you would just put that back afterwards. We got a little bit of remnants up there from our off-roading. Yeah. All right, so now that we're getting down to the wire, I just hand screwed in one of the top bolts here. That way when we take out all these bottom ones, the pan doesn't fall into the drain pan here as well. If you guys are lucky like me and you have a 2021, we do not have a drain plug on the bottom for this, so all the oil is going to come out once we remove all these screws and break the seal. So with that being said, we don't want the whole pan to fall in. Starting to drain out now, guys. Bring you back a little bit here. The factory fill is typically kind of gross. Like I said, even that fill port plug had a good bit of stuff on it. So we're gonna take out that last one, see what happens here.
Oh, money shot.
There it is. All right, so once we're down to the last couple drips, we're gonna remove this bolt up top here, take the pan off, and clean everything up. So I'll just wipe it down with a wet rag, basically to get the dirt and some of the extra grease off while this continues to drip. The differential is fully drained. We wiped everything down around the mating surface. We even cleaned up the stock seal here. Now, you will reuse the stock seal, believe it or not. It is pretty stout. I mean, it's a rubber seal with what feels like a metal inside. So yeah, unless this is really beat up or something, there's really no reason to buy a new one. But if you want to, definitely check out your local dealership. I'm sure that they'd be happy to sell you one for $100 or so. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and put the seal on, and then we are gonna start in with the new differential cover. Now, the new differential cover actually comes with new hardware. So all of the bolts are recessed so you don't drag them on anything, and they are Allen key. All right, so here comes the new cover. Oh, she's heavy. She's a big girl. She is a big girl. All right, she's looking better already. So we're gonna go ahead and put all these Allen screws in and torque them down to 20 foot-pounds. And once we're all done, we're gonna start hooking up the hardware and everything. But the real big benefit of this cover, other than the fact that it looks cool and it's made out of iron, so this thing's literally gonna take some serious impacts, is the fact that it has this gigantic fill port up here. So we can literally just take in my case, a 5-quart jug and just dump the fluid in. So as soon as it starts running out here, we know we're full. This is gonna help with off-roading, and it's also gonna make the truck look really cool from the back. So let's go ahead and get this thing bolted up. All right, so we are done setting up the screws. This is how you're gonna wanna do it. So once everything is kind of in place, we're gonna go ahead and strategically torque these things down, not one side at a time. We're gonna kind of go crisscross pattern to make sure everything is nice and evened up. And then we're gonna torque them down to 20 foot-pounds and start putting the bracketry up there at the top back on. All right, so like I said, we're gonna do this in a crisscross pattern, but ultimately we just wanna make sure it is at 20 foot-pounds. You don't wanna over torque these things. All right, guys, so all of the bolts are torqued down to 20 foot-pounds. Next, we're gonna go ahead and start putting the bracketry up on the top. That doesn't necessarily need to be torqued down, just get it snug. Just obviously the opposite of disassembly, we're just gonna slide it on there just like so, and then this back bracket can slide right on that one. And that's pretty much it. Now, this does come with new bolts and nuts, so even the nuts that hold on the bracketry are all gonna be new. Okay, so everything is in place. The next step is going to be to remove that fill port and start dumping some fluid in. Now, this fill port does not ship with the rubber gasket in place either, so we'll go ahead and add that as well. That is something that is included, it's just not in place during shipment. So this is the O-ring. We'll just go ahead and put it on here like this. But after it's on, I'm going to go ahead and wipe some differential fluid on it just to make sure it makes a nice seal. So with that all sealed up, we'll set that aside for now. Oh, there it goes. All right, she's full. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put the fill port in once that stops running out. So this torques down to 25 foot-pounds, and there's a rubber seal in there now, so it will stay nice and watertight. Okay, once that stops draining, we're gonna go ahead and put the fill port plug in. We've already gotten it Teflon taped up. So with the secondary fill port here, I just kind of flushed it up with the outside of the differential cover because there's nothing in there for it to hit to torque it down on, so I didn't want to even push it any further. It's flush with the cover, so I don't think it needs to go any further than that anyway. Nothing's leaking out. We are basically good to go here. Next, my friend is doing his truck with the same equipment, so I'm not going to show you the same thing over again, but we're going to take a break from mine for a second while I look up the diagram on how to run that particular breather hose, because it is a lot longer than stock and it goes all the way up into the gas tank area, so got to kind of have an idea of where it routes. In the meantime, I'm going to help him with this, so I'll catch you guys back here in a couple minutes, but it's going to feel like a second for you. All right, guys, so the rear differential cover is done. So yeah, it's looking awesome. It's going to be a little more functional for off-roading, and it holds a hair more fluid from what I understand. But what we're going to do next is actually the differential breathing tube. So like I said, this was one for a 2018 Colorado. I believe the Z71s and the ZR2s both used it. And like I said, this thing is super functional for off-roading, especially if you're going to do any kind of water traveling that comes up past maybe halfway up your wheels, because that stock differential breathing tube is definitely going to get wet if you go into water that deep, but this one will not. So we're going to go ahead and try to fumble our ways through routing this thing where it needs to go, because there's not a lot of information on the internet on how to do it. The little diagram that I found isn't super helpful, so a lot of this is going to be trial and error, so let's get to it. All right, so under the truck we can see the stock routing point is on the passenger side right around where the exhaust is, which is kind of an odd place for it to exit from, but ultimately I have it wrapped back over here. This is the end. That's all the longer the stock one is, maybe 8 to 10 inches long, and it normally just sits right up here on top of the rear differential, which in my opinion is not high enough. I think it has to be a little bit higher than that. Honestly, where we're going to put it up at the fuel fill port is probably a little bit too high, but it is what it is. The stock option here gives you all of the appropriate clips and everything you're going to need, so this is the way to go in my opinion. This isn't too hard. What we're going to do is just literally grab this and pull it off the stock breather nipple here and put on the, I would say aftermarket, but it's still stock, the older option, I guess, just longer breather tube. So like I said, stock one, we're just going to grab it and work it off, and that's it. So we are done with that step. This is all there is to it. This isn't that high off the ground. It's not something that's never going to happen. If you take it off road, this is definitely going to get wet. So this is something pretty much everybody should be doing in my opinion. Now next we're going to take the longer hose here, and we're just going to slip it on to that same nipple. I'm going to push it all the way down, and now is where we get to kind of just work it out, because there's really no instructions for this. All right, so the first clip is going to go right on that hose, and we're going to have a little bit of an arch there like that. So a little bit of a closer look. First clip kind of clips to that existing hose to keep it in place, and we're just going to kind of clip it as we go here. This one will go up here behind all this stuff, clip it back onto this same rubber hose here. There we go. Starting to look like it's meant to be there. All right, so the second clip goes right there. So differential's right here. We're going to put it right there, and there's actually a little thicker part of the rubber that the clips actually sit on, so you can tell it's built to go right there. And then the third one is going to be down a little bit further. Again, slightly thicker rubber right here where there's another clip sitting, and that's where the third clip is going to go. So right here, just push it and it snaps right into place. So we're going to kind of just follow that around for a little bit until we get up to the gas tank area. So we are under the truck, and we're looking up by the fuel fill neck, which is right there. And to the right of that, you're gonna see the Christmas style tree connector with the breather end connected to it. So that part is on the 2021s as well, where you can just snap that right into place. And now the breather is all the way up there at the fuel fill neck. So coming down from there, and the next connection will be made right here in this pack of tubes and wires heading up to the front of the cab, there's one connector that will actually snap onto this metal holder right here, right in front of the rear driver's side tire. And then the line will continue on back to the next point of connection is right up there on the brake lines. And then the next one down is a Christmas tree style connection into an existing metal bracket. It actually goes on top of that bracket though, and then continues down with a little bit of slack for movement in the rear axle, and then it connects to the tubing running across the top of the rear differential all the way over to the connection of the rear differential. All right, so I know a lot of that was a little bit confusing because it's hard to see exactly what I'm showing underneath the truck because how tight it is all under there. But ultimately, to make this as easy as possible, you're going to want to pull out your fender well a little bit. This will give you access to get your hands in there and get up inside the fuel tank here, where you'll be able to connect the farther end of the breather tube. But before we get into that, I'm going to go underneath one more time and kind of show you from start to finish where we went with all the connections. So obviously we have the differential right there, and right here is the breather tube. It comes up and the first connection is made right there. Then there's a second connection made behind the differential to an existing rubber tube right there. A third connection, again, existing rubber tube, a little bit further down the line right there. After the third connection, we come up to the fourth one where it loops up and actually goes into this Christmas tree style connector on top of the existing metal bracket. This is what gives it enough room for some articulation back here or axle drop that will allow this to not separate under full load. From there, there's a last connection right there that actually snaps onto some of the existing brake lines. And then the final connection is a little further up there, snaps onto a metal bracket. After that, it goes all the way up to the fuel neck where I showed you that filler neck with a hole in it where the last Christmas tree style connector pushes in and is held in place. So that is the entire install of the longer differential breathing tube along with the differential cover. The only thing left to do is the front differential fluid, which we're going to hop to right now.
The next day.
All right, guys, so we are about to start into the front differential on the Colorado. We already have the differential fluid here with the pump ready to go. We're going to crawl underneath, remove the skid plate which covers up the front differential, and then we'll be able to get to the fill and the drain ports so we can get this fluid swapped out. I never mentioned yesterday what kind of fluid I was using in the rear differential either, and I'm using the same in the rear and the front. I'm not using the AC Delco OEM GM stuff. I actually went with a synthetic fluid instead, and this is the stuff I'm using right here. So I will link this in the description down below, but what this is basically just synthetic gear oil. For the ZR2, it doesn't require any kind of limited slip additives or anything, so if you have a Z71, it would be a different story. You would want something with limited slip. With the ZR2s, these are locking differentials. They don't need any limited slip friction modifiers or anything, and this is the better fluid you could use because it is full synthetic, whereas the stock stuff is a blend. Now, there's a couple reasons I made this change, but the biggest one is the fact that this is synthetic, and it's also a lot cheaper than the GM stuff. So yeah, I'll report back after a while of how well this stuff is working, but I know a couple other guys in the Colorado forums using the same stuff and they haven't had any issues. So this is what we're going to pump into the front differential. So here's the differential, guys. This is the driver's side front tire. This is the front differential. This is the fill port and obviously the drain port. This is going to be your standard 3/8 ratchet to go in here and crack these open. We're going to do the same thing with Teflon tape on these guys, but we're basically just going to drain it and fill it. So we're going to crack the fill port first to make sure we can get it off. That way, if something happens and that doesn't come out, we're not stuck without fluid in this thing. Okay, fill ports out.
Oh,
It's pretty clean.
yeah, it is.
That's kind of what I've seen from other people too, is that their front differentials were a lot cleaner than the rear. Pretty much because this isn't used as often. So we'll just let that drain for a while, and then we're going to come in, clean up the plugs, and put some Teflon on them. Lastly, I'm just going to kind of wipe it up, clean up the area, and then we're going to go ahead and put the drain plug back in. Now, we did put Teflon tape on both the drain and the fill plugs. Make sure you do that before you put it in, just to avoid any kind of leaks in the future. And then we're just going to tighten this down to kind of hand tight. probably somewhere around 20 foot-pounds, but it's kind of tight in here, so right around there is where I'm thinking we should be good. Now we're going to go ahead and start pumping the differential fluid in. As you can see, I have a gallon pump here. That is actually from Amazon, as well as the fluid. It's the Mobil 1 synthetic differential fluid, but ultimately you're going to need that gallon pumper there to get the fluid up in the front differential. So this particular pump actually will stay in place. There's a little like clip thing on it, so you might want to consider getting something like that. That way you don't have to hold it while also pumping on the other side. So after the fluid starts coming out of the fill port up there at the top, I went ahead and put the cap back in, and we're going to just snug it up. Again, it's really tight to get a torque wrench up there, so just use the good and tight measurement and you should be good to go. Okay, so with Teflon tape, we snugged them up to what felt like about 20 foot-pounds, which is what the rear calls for, and we are good to go. We'll just go ahead and wipe up the excess diff fluid, and that is one front differential completely changed. All right, guys, that is going to do it for the video for today. We finished up the front differential, drained the old fluid, filled it up with the new Mobil 1 synthetic stuff. Yesterday, we managed to change out the rear differential cover with an AEV iron cover and change the fluid, of course, and then we also added that longer differential breather tube. So the truck is definitely ready for some more off-roading. Now, if you guys liked what you saw today, please smash that thumbs up button. Let me know you're liking the content so I can keep making it for you. If you guys have any questions about what we did today with the truck, the differential fluids, the differential cover, or the breather, go ahead and shoot them in the comment section down below. Let me know, and I will make sure you get an answer. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do. We're going to have loads of Colorado content like this coming you are not going to want to miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload.